Your Excellency, Ambassador Ba, Ambassador Andrew Young, Bernadette Paolo, who is the President and CEO of the Africa Society of the National Summit on Africa, and Gail Ifshin, President of Discovery Channel Global Education Partnerships. I'm Cedric Suzman from the Southern Center for International Studies, and I'm here to welcome you on behalf of the Southern Center and to let you know how really excited and honored we are to be presenting this program, to be presenting it in partnership with the Africa Society, the Discovery Channel, and our funders, the USAID, which has made this possible. This is the third part of a long journey to bring Africa to our schools. We started with the administrators and educators. In the first part, we then brought your teachers together to provide them with information and materials on Africa that can make your classes more exciting. And now we're so delighted to have you, the students, here. It's as they say, where the rubber hits the road, this is where the learning takes place, and this is what we want to see. It's wonderful to have you here today. Africa is a hugely exciting continent and a wonderful place to visit. The countries are as diverse as any on earth and as exciting. And you saw just a glimpse in that beautiful few minutes of film. And I know that all of you will want, when you graduate or even before you graduate, to think of including Africa in your junior year abroad or in your summer vacation plans. That's something that I think we can all turn to. Africa is important. It's important for its people, for its mineral resources. Interestingly, it's growing. 65% of the people of Africa have lived in countries that could be called fast-growing until just this recent recession when everybody is taking a pause. Africa is doing better educationally. The number of children in primary school is over 90% now. These are all important aspects of Africa that we want to bring to you. So on behalf of the Southern Center, which for 40 years has been trying to educate the American people about the world, we are delighted to be focusing on Africa, which we've done in many different ways. Some of you may have seen some of the video and exercises that the Southern Center has produced for your classrooms, and I want to welcome you here today. I'm going to ask the President, Bernadette Paolo of the Africa Society, to say more about why you're here and what you'll be doing during the day. Thank you.
Well, good morning. I want to say good morning, first of all, to our honored guest, Ambassador Andrew Young and His Excellency Amadou Ba, and also thank the Southern Center and our other partner, Gail Ifshin, from Discovery Channel Global Education Partnership. But most of all, you are our honored guest. And we're here today, all of us, just to talk to you about the continent of Africa and why it matters to you, to the United States. It's in our legitimate security interest and in our economic interest as well. But first of all, I want to engage you in this conversation, and we're going to have a contest, and we're going to see who wins some really good prizes in a few minutes. But the topic for discussion is Africa Matters, but why does Africa matter and to whom? First of all, Africa matters to the United States, to all of the people in the United States who've come from the continent of Africa, and to the 800 million people who inhabit that continent. But Africa is the cradle of civilization, so it's just not starting to matter to us. It's mattered since the beginning of time. And in this 21st century, there are other reasons why it matters. Africa is the second largest continent in the world, covering about 22% of the world land total area, with a population close to 1 billion soon. The continent of Africa, I know you may not know this, or some of you may, touches your life daily. Every day, how many of you drink coffee or tea? Some of you are too young. I see some hands there. How many of you have gold jewelry? How many of you have real diamonds? Yeah, wow, that's a large number. How many of you ride in cars where when you pull up to the gas station, you put gas in your car, right? Do you know that? So, Africa, there's metal, copper, gold. There's a substance in your cell phones called coltan. It touches you. 1 out of every 4 barrels of oil in the United States now comes from the continent of Africa. And Africa matters because it's the next frontier for trade. And we have the first free trade agreement, the African Growth and Opportunities Act. And Africa, the continent of Africa, sits on 5/8 of the mineral reserves in the world. So it's very important for the United States to be on good terms with how many countries in Africa? 54 countries in Africa. We need only to look at the Chinese. And the Chinese are trying to do business in Africa, and we have a lot of competitors in Africa, so it's in America's best interest. And you are central to that because you are our goodwill ambassadors to the future. But now I want to see, instead of my talking to you, I want to talk to you for a moment before I ask you questions about health concerns. Many of you, and I want you to raise your hand, when I say Africa, honestly, what 3 images come to mind? Yes. Poverty. AIDS. What? Pretty landscapes. Okay. You have 2 to 3 stereotypes right there. Poverty, HIV/AIDS, and someone had something that said pretty landscapes. But Africa today, you'll learn, has many other images that some of you haven't seen. Yes, Africa has HIV/AIDS, but there's progress being made on HIV/AIDS, which you'll see later. But the primary reason Africa matters is its incredible contribution to the world, consisting mainly of its people and its leaders. Our own President, Barack Obama's father, comes from the continent of Africa. And you may not know this, but before we turn to you, I'm going to give you one fact. In the United States of America, of all immigrants, and some of you are sons and daughters of families that came from other countries, the highest wage earners and the people with the most education come from the continent of Africa. And so those are some of the reasons. But now let's talk about you. I want to see very quickly who answers these questions for the prizes that I have for you, okay? All right, let's start. The first question, I want one brilliant person to stand up and tell me the name of 10 African countries. Okay. Just a moment. Okay. Okay, just one moment. Sit down. I guess that was too easy of a question. Now, I'm going to make that question harder because I only have 3 prizes, and there are many smart people in this audience, obviously. And I heard that that the city of Atlanta did a very good job in educating students about Africa. So the question's going to get difficult because too many of you know the answers, and I only have 3 prizes. I want someone in this audience, or maybe 3 someones, to tell me the name of, listen very carefully, 10 African countries and 10 African presidents. Okay, do I have any hands? Do I have anyone who knows the answer? All right. Just a moment. We have to see if we have a winner here. We have to see if we have a winner.
Please tell us your name and what school you're from.
My name is Wilson Nakamis, and I'm from Chestnut Lawn Middle School.
All right, Chestnut. Let's hear the 10 countries first.
Nigeria, Kenya, Tunisia, Morocco, Zimbabwe, Guinea, Ghana, Togo, South Africa, and Egypt.
You got 10 correct. You're halfway there.
All right.
And these are some great prizes, too.
Now, you're halfway there. And this is the toughest part. Can he name 10 African heads of state? Okay. All right, we have people betting against you up here, so let's see if you can even make it to 5.
Olusegun Obasanjo.
What?
Olusegun Obasanjo.
Okay, Obasanjo was the president of Nigeria. Do you know who's the president now?
Yeah, Umaru Musa Yar'Adua.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right, wait. Okay, go ahead.
Oh gosh, this is hard.
All right, you have to be quiet because I have 2 more big prizes, and they're big prizes. Go ahead.
Nkrumah, from Ghana. I forgot.
Okay, Kwame Nkrumah was the president of Ghana at one time. He's no longer the president. He was the founding. Okay. All right.
Oh.
Ambassador Young said, since I didn't say present president, you get that one. He's the boss. All right.
John Kufuor.
What?
John Kufuor.
Okay, John Kufuor was the president of Ghana. I'll give you that. 3.
Alhaji Musa Tafawa Balewa.
No, you're going way far. You have to come current now.
Oh.
I'm gonna give you have 3. Get to 5.
Nelson Mandela.
All right, I'm counting that.
Oh gosh.
All right, 1 more.
I don't think. Oh, gosh. Ooh, I should listen in class.
All right. Because you did such a good job, I'm going to give you. This is I'll give you one of the first prizes. Okay?
Okay.
Because you were brave, and I have some other prizes for those of you who are as brave. Okay, this is a $100 gift certificate to Macy's. All right. All right. Now, students, we have to do this very quickly because we have a large program. And we're being televised, okay? We're being televised, and we have a very long program, so I'm going to do this very quickly. For the other first prize, is there anyone who thinks that they can come up here and name 10 African presidents? Any hands? All right. I have a different question. You have to listen to the question. I have a different question. Different question. Who can come and tell me the name of 10 famous Africans? Okay. This young man.
Okay, please.
Okay.
And tell us what school you're from.
We want to listen
Ben
to this.
Fleury. I'm from Shiloh Middle School.
All right, you have to be very quiet because if he doesn't answer this correctly, I still have these awards.
Okay. Jomo Kenyatta. Who else? Barack Obama.
Okay.
Nelson Mandela. Who else is there?
Okay. That's 3. Okay.
Wait, Jesse Owens.
No. All right. I'm going to give you an honorable mention, which is a $50 gift card to iTunes. All right. I was told to get someone way in the back. All right. Jomo, select someone.
Right here? Right here?
The question is...
Okay, please state your... and tell us what school you're from.
Leslie Cisneros, and I'm from Fort Hill Academy.
All right. Young lady, you've heard now the answer to the question about African countries, and you've heard the answer to the question about African presidents, and you've heard the answer to the question about people who were famous from the continent of Africa. And so I want to ask you, and I know you came in toward the end, if you can tell us in a minute or two why you think the continent of Africa matters to the United States. Why does it matter to you, and why does it matter to the world? Shh.
I don't want to answer it. I don't want to answer it.
Okay, she's shy. Is there else? Come.
All right.
Please tell us your name and what school you're from.
Okay. My name is Brenna, and I'm from Chestnut Log. And,
Okay, quiet.
Africa is important because it has lots of natural resources and, like, diamonds and gold and oil. and how many?
Okay, other than that, personally, those are facts that we just talked about. But I want you to talk to us personally from your own perspective about why you think this continent is important. Okay.
Africa's important because there's a lot of great people that have come from Africa to America, and they have helped us a lot. Stop.
That's right.
And hold on, I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay. I want to thank all of you. I want you to come and get your
Okay.
award, which is a $100 American Express gift card.
That was the last one.
All right, before we go to our next speaker, Before we go to our next speaker, and our program now is very serious, and you're going to hear from Discovery Channel Global Education Partnership, who we've worked together to bring American students and teachers to an African country, Uganda. You're going to hear from Ambassador Ba from Senegal. Senegal's in West Africa. And then you're going to hear from a man who is a legend, not only in Atlanta, not only in the United States, not only in Africa, but in the world. So we are very pleased to have them join us. So I ask for your attention. Not only does Africa matter, but each of you matters to us. We want you to have a great day, and I'm going to be interviewing some of you at the end of this day to see if you can articulate more clearly why this continent means so much. Thank you very much.
Bernadette, thank you very much. I'd like to start by thanking the United States Agency for International Development, whose assistance has made this entire project possible. I'd also like to thank the Southern Center for your collaboration in hosting us today. And finally, I appreciate our partnership with the Africa Society. So Bernadette, thank you so much, and thank you to the rest of the Africa Society staff. Since 1997, Discovery Channel Global Education Partnership has been using the power of video to inspire curiosity and increase learning in under-resourced parts of the world. The project is comprehensive. It includes teacher training, it includes technology, and most importantly, it includes programming, video programming, that's been created in collaboration with educators in the communities we serve in 10 African countries. But the film I want to focus on right now is even more special. In a second, I'm going to show you a clip from a video called Africa Today. The film is one of the major pillars of this Teach Africa initiative, and each one of you will receive a copy of the film when you leave today. It's also the centerpiece of a website, and we'll provide you information about the website before you leave today. But it's a lasting and tangible resource on Africa that is part of the legacy of this initiative. At the core of the architecture of the film, as Bernadette mentioned, it's the story of students and teachers who traveled to Uganda to meet with their counterparts there. The exchange offered both sides an opportunity to see beyond the stereotypes that we hold of Africa and Africans, and that Africans hold of America and Americans. It's also an opportunity to share with you some of Africa, its geography, its diverse cultures, and its stories. The segments that you're going to see a little bit of are meant to provide a window into a continent beyond what you can see on the nightly news. So I guess right now, Jay, I'd like to ask you to show a clip about Africa Today.
American teacher Anna Kuhn at work just outside Los Angeles, California. Anna is just days from a somewhat extraordinary trip to Africa. She's part of a team of US teachers and students from California who'll spend a week learning about Africa, its people, and their way of life. Anna is excited about her pending journey and is eager to get to know Africa. Anna and her colleagues will spend time in Uganda, a landlocked East African nation with the natural beauty of the Nile and Lake Victoria. They'll be joined by teachers and students from Jinja, Uganda's second largest city. Justin Ogunji is also making the trip to Uganda. He admits he knows very little about that part of Africa and the people. It's clear he's spending the next few days trying to learn as much as he can about Uganda before boarding the plane.
I'm hoping to learn how they feel, what's their general perception of the world, and maybe some current events.
Aziza is also preparing for the trip to Uganda. She believes Africa has a lot to teach the US.
I really am interested to meet the teachers and the students and just basically learn their day-to-day routine at school, what works for them in the classroom, what are some of their successes in the classroom and out. So I'm just really looking forward to learning about the people, the culture, and their school systems.
The week-long visit focuses on breaking down stereotypes and learning from one another by exploring topics ranging from education to media and politics. And there's a lot to learn.
The average American is not very well informed about Africa or its countries. Honestly, I know that I'm not, and I'll admit that freely.
The Americans too are on a mission to share their way of life with the Ugandans, whose impression of the US is somewhat distorted.
When I think of America, I look at everybody being so rich, well-off, well-informed, and with all the technology everybody must be having in the home, which is not like us.
So each side has come with preconceived notions. The Americans having heard of wars, diseases, and underdeveloped infrastructure, and the Ugandans thinking of the US as a place where wealth is pervasive, a sort of heaven, one Ugandan said. Clearly a lot to learn on both sides.
Africa, it's kind of a footnote in world history class.
I studied America in college when we were doing North American geography.
I learned something about America, but obviously it wasn't all into the details. It wasn't something much, just summarized.
And while the US and Uganda may be far apart on so many issues, on others, as the participants soon discovered, there's much common ground.
You need that hip-hop and R&B to make the party something enjoyable and exciting.
In Uganda, basically, among musicians right now, there is a lot of beef. Why should they give a bad example to us? If Bobby Wine was like dissing Chameleon, who am I not to diss Justin in feature like that?
Are you surprised to hear Amina next to you from Uganda? You've never been to America. Use the language you use in the streets in LA so easily.
It is pretty surprising. I think technology has something to do with that, but it's amazing that we have that in common.
It's a week-long expedition seen through the eyes of students and teachers who hope to change the way two cultures view each other. So at the end of the day, did perceptions change? And will this experience influence each teacher or student as they move forward?
It was a real encouraging experience for me to see youth with so much focus and determination. It was just, something extraordinary.
I take away with it lots of hope as a teacher, knowing that there's so much good that's going around the world with education.
The city, it wasn't like I expected it, but I really like it. Everyone's pretty relaxed, and it seems like it's a nice place to live.
When it comes to education, I've seen that we have quite a number of other things that seem to be more organized at one level, and they are not.
When you hear about the United States, definitely you expect a lot of superiority. But from what we have received from them and our interaction, we are almost at par.
I thought everyone in America is supposed to be very, very rich. Yeah, and everyone has to be very educated. But I learned that there are some who are illiterate.
The people that I met and how open they were to embrace someone from a different country, and how interesting it was to ask questions and learn that they're pretty similar, or we have similar traits.
We are not so far away from the Americans, but we are moving towards them, and we are almost in line with the way we handle our issues.
Meeting new friends and meeting all these people, it really gave me insight to what African culture was really about.
I was expecting a very big difference, but right now, after the discussions, I found out that there's a very slight difference between the United States and Uganda.
If you can relate to the policies in America and the policies in Uganda, if we put them together at the same time, I think in each country it can work out best.
I thought I'd be able to teach them some things, but in actuality, I learned a lot more from them.
I expected them to be wilder than they are. But okay, they're great.
Today in Uganda, the conversation was among these teachers and students. But the conversation continues in classrooms and homes here and abroad. An open exchange of ideas and experiences can be powerful. The question for these participants, and indeed for all of us, what can we learn from each other, and what do we have to teach?
Thank you. We hope that you will all share this video with your friends and with your teachers. Start the conversation about Africa. It was once said that leadership involves finding a parade and getting in front of it and leading it. So I hope all of us here today hope that you will lead this parade. Thank you very much.
I would now like to ask His Excellency Ambassador Ba from Senegal to come forward and tell us a little about his country and his role in Washington as the ambassador for Senegal. Thank you.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. You give me a lot of energy here. Very different from what we do in Washington. Seeing all these young, vibrant young people give us a lot of hope. I see it an honor really to come here and talk to you today. And for this opportunity, I thank Bernadette Paolo and Africa Society giving me a chance to come to Atlanta and talk to, I don't know how many students, a lot of them. So it's really very encouraging. I get it that you guys are already interested in Africa. Otherwise, you're not going to be here. I really see that. And I can already say, given your enthusiasm about answering the question, tough question of Bernadette, that I'm preaching to the converted. Thank you for that. Yeah, I just want to first, tell you, why you should care about Africa and be learn about it. Have it in your curriculum in school. So as Bernadette, as Cedric said, I am the ambassador of Senegal, and Senegal is in West Africa. It's the westmost part of Africa, meaning that it is the closest to the United States. Actually, it's just right across the Atlantic Ocean from where you are, from Atlanta. As a matter of fact, there is a plane leaving here every day, Atlanta, going to Dakar. And it's only take about, 8 hours to be in Dakar. That's how close, Senegal and Africa is to the United States. Probably closer than Europe. So you see that we are almost neighbors there. So before I talk a little bit about Senegal, I just want to tell you why Africa matters a little bit. Besides, I think all the things that Bernadette has already said, I think those points need to be repeated again so that you really get it a little bit. First, if I tell you that the first human being known is from Africa, is that important? The first human being is from Africa, known to be alive, the ancient, that's from Africa. If I tell you that 3,000 years before the Christian era, which make it almost 5,000 years. You know that a century is 100 years, okay? I'm talking about 5,000 years because we are into, it's 3,200 years. The Egypt is in Africa. One of the students named it. Created the most brilliant civilization in the world. I mean, this is before Europe and the United States, even as it exists. You have to remember, United States is only 200 years about. Is that right? So it's not a long time. African civilization, Egypt, date back to 3000 before the Christian era. And this was a very brilliant civilization. Up to today in Egypt, people go and visit Egypt and look at all the pyramids, beautiful pyramids, the mummies. They kept their king and queen up to today, fresh, etc. So this was the most brilliant civilization at the time in the world. But then come little things. First, in the 8th century, some of the Arabs start coming to Africa. You know, that tells you that even in Egypt at the time, it's inhabited by African. You know, I'm talking about black African live in the north there. It was not Arabs as it is today at the time. So they came to Africa around that time. And then after that, another notable thing is that around before the 15th centuries, Africa had many kingdoms. We got what you call the Ghanaian kingdom, and then followed by Mali, followed by Songhai. And these are very organized communities, okay, and also very brilliant culture and civilization. And we have Tombouctou to show. You know, Tombouctou is a city in Mali that has one of the oldest libraries with books that have wrote about the history of that time. Just to tell you how old, you know, when we talk about Africa it is. And then comes the first explorer, European explorer, that took that small boats, not with engine, and then go to the ocean. Some come to America, others come and start discovering Africa. And they stay in some port. Among those ports was Dakar, Senegal. You know, and from there, they started doing what's called the slave trade. They started around this time, just before in the 15th centuries, they started this. And then brought these African people here in the Americas, you know, and in exchange, they get a lot of, they bring goods from Europe and bring it to Africa. What does that tell you? That even during that time, Africa was known to be part of the world economy, but even though it was the worst type of it. And up to today, we are very linked to America because of that, because of this slave trade. We have a lot of people that are from African descent, African American, that their parents and grandparents and older parents come from Africa. So we have this connection. And then, and because these connections, that we are very linked, and I think Africa matters to especially those, and probably to all Americans, because the African American contributed very much to the development of the United States. Without them, there's not going to be United States as we know it today. You have to remember that. And all of them, they come from Africa. But what did it do to Africa? It created a lot of problems for Africa, because we lost a lot of young people, able people. And then a lot of population moved out of Africa. So you can see how it impacts the development of Africa. So that because we losing all these people is very difficult, you know, to compensate. So it will have to take a long time before you get those young people and replace them so they can develop the economy. You can see then the effect of the relationship with US and Africa there. Then after that, the Europeans did stop that in the 18th centuries, but they came back and went inside Africa and colonized Africa. And then took all the minerals and things they needed to develop the economy of Europe, you know, during that time. So the capitalism, when it comes to develop, and they invented a lot of engine and developed the industry as we know it today, they took a lot of material from Africa to be able to do it. That also tells you that Africa at that time even contributed to world economy development, the same way they did during the slave trade. So that also is important to know, because those two facts combined have cost Africa dearly, That's why when you hear that Africa is poor, Africa is this, you have to remember that the Europeans probably make Africa more poor than it should be normally, given what they have taken from Africa for their own advantage. That is very important to say. And then after that, in Berlin in 1885, they decided to divide Africa into countries. That's why we have more than 50 states in Africa today. So it's not one state, okay? It's a continent with more than 50 states, I should say. I would say it's 53 states of Africa, okay? And and each one of these states has a president, is independent with the other state, even though we are trying to get all the African countries to be in one government. But this is work to be done. This is where we are heading. But we are not there yet. We are not like the United States. You have many states. In the state, you have a governor, and then you have your representative within that state, but you have the federal government that actually cover all the United States. In Africa, it's not that yet. Each state is independent from the others, and they have borders. Everybody has his own president, his own government to speak of. That's where we are. It's so huge that you can put the United States, part of Russia, Europe, South America, inside Africa. That's how Africa is big in terms of continent. I think the fact that it's so immense is also something that you have to care about. As a landmass also is one of the really biggest landmass. So he has potential for many things, including agriculture, including industry, electricity, including commerce. So it has potential for all of this. And I think that just to add to that, the fact that it is so huge, you have the population, as Bernadette says, is about almost 1 billion today. Okay, 2005 is already 900 billion. Of this 1 billion people today in Africa, which is a lot of people, different culture, different language. There is not only one language in Africa. You have hundreds and hundreds of language. Even within the states, sometimes you have more than 10 languages within the spoken. Okay, and the people are also different. They are not the same. Different feature. The people in the West are different from the people in the South, different from people in the East. In terms of their characteristic in the group. So it's very diverse. In North Africa, also, you have also people from Arab descent that's in there. So you can see then the diversity that we talk about Africa. In some country in South Africa, Southern Africa, you have people from European descent. So you can also show the diversity. Of this population, 42% are young people below 15 years age, So you see that the future of our continent is the young people. Like you, probably some are older, some are maybe about that age. But it is 15 years is 45. It means that in Africa today, you have close to 4,200,000 young people that are 15 years or less. And that's the future. And I think I can see there a connection with you. Because these young people are the ones that are now changing the continent as a whole. They have totally new different approach on how to run the country. They are agents of change the same way you are. And I think that in this world that will belong to you very soon, it will be good for you to have this kind of connection between the young people in Africa, as you have seen on the videos in terms of their education. And many African countries today invest a lot in education because they know that's where the future is. But in education, you have to know the geography of the world to do that. And I think knowing the geography of the world allow one to relate to each other. And I think that if you look at, what else would I say? If you look at the kind of things that Bernadette talked about in terms of, how Africa touch you, in terms of something that you, in your food or coffee or drinks, like talk about coffee, tea, flowers come here from Africa. We bring even clothing sometimes come from Africa. You talk about diamond, gold, iron, all of these in Africa. And not only that, it is the mining represent almost 12% of the world. So when you talk about gold, diamond, uranium, which is a metal that is very important for anything nuclear, all of these things are still plenty in Africa. This is despite colonization. We still have it. And every day they discover new oil. So that also show you that Africa will be still something very important for you. To make it matter worse, when I go to Washington, in the United States today, a lot of people analyze Africa and say that Africa is more strategic now for the United States than ever before. And the reason they are saying it is that the Chinese are coming big time in Africa. They have a huge appetite for oil. They have huge appetite for minerals, natural resources, so they come to Africa to get it. The Indians are coming big time. Malaysia are coming. A lot of countries are now looking at Africa as a place to go find things they need to grow their economy. And I think the United States, finally people are starting to get it, that they need to rethink their Africa policy and come to Africa and try to compete even with those newcomers in Africa that are China, India, etc. So just to tell you how important those, how much time I have? 2 more minutes. Okay, before I finish, I want to talk about another reason why you should be Africa Matter, and that's to look at the global world. Have you heard that the world is global now? Anybody have heard about global world? Global, so you know that. It's become global. It means that we are living now in a world where everything that you do here have an effect in others, no matter where the people are in the world. If you pollute in the United States, the pollution will touch Africa, will touch Senegal. If you have terrorism here, you most likely will have terrorism in Africa, and vice versa. If you have a financial crisis like what we're having today, it will affect everything in the world. It will affect Africa, it is affecting Europe. That's what we have. And that's what we are, the world we are, you guys are going to live is this world that is interconnected. That is, everything is related. You cannot isolate yourself from anything. You are belonging to this global village that we are talking about. And you, in your generation, the Facebook generation, is that how you call it, Facebook? Yeah, you connect with each other using Facebook, using cell phones, text messages, using YouTube. All of these things make you, even you yourself, more connected to the rest of the world than anything. And then your counterpart in Africa that you have seen in these videos can only wait for you to have a connection with them so you can know their lives, what they do, because you can do it more than he. When I was growing up, there was no telephone even, let alone in our place there, let alone now cell phone and Facebook. That shows you how close you are now in the world. I'm not talking about Africa only, but in the world, but tells you about Africa. So with that, just to tell you that as young people, you only have your education. I just want to stress that. Education is the most important thing for you in your life. It is an investment in your life that you will never regret. And in this time, if you don't do it at this age, you will never almost have time to do it the right way. This is the only time you have. If you invest in education today, it means that in the future, you will have a good job. You will have money. It means that you're going to have money. And also, if you have money, you will have plenty of time to spend that money because you can afford vacation. If you don't do that, you might end up doing 3-4 jobs just to make ends meet. That's a big difference. But education also gives you a culture. And culture gives you a good quality of life. And good quality of life means that you are known the world and you are very connected to the world and you know what is going on, you know what's affecting you around the world. And in that, Africa will play a major role in the future. You are the future of your country, of the United States, I can tell you that Africa is the future of the world. And that's where I finish here today.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for those interesting remarks about why Africa matters and your own country. I now have great pleasure and an honor to introduce someone in Atlanta who needs no introduction, but let me just tell you that Andrew Young has been an icon in the city for as long as I can remember. He not only was a top aide to Martin Luther King Jr. in the civil rights movement, a congressman from the 5th District, a two-term mayor of Atlanta, and our ambassador to the United Nations, but has traveled Africa in his own personal and business career, trying to build connections, make connections, and show that we are truly connected to Africa. We're going to have a brief video to introduce Ambassador Young, and then some remarks from you. Thank you. Will you show the video quickly? Thank you.
Places unlike any you've ever seen. Stories you will never forget.
From the first moment I put my foot on African soil, I knew it was a place for me.
And a vision that could change the world.
Africa is the missing link in the global economy.
Travel the world with former United Nations Ambassador Andrew Young.
What's happening in Africa is sometimes very disturbing, but most often very exciting.
It gives Americans a chance to begin to see Africa as a continent of possibilities, not of problems.
This is just one of the upcoming specials from Andrew Young Presents, a new series of quarterly television specials that will explore current global issues for our local audience.
Great man, this is 15,000 carats.
Each original episode designed to entertain, challenge, and satisfy viewers from all walks of life. For over 50 years, Andrew Young has been one of the country's most powerful voices.
This is a revolution that won't fire a shot. We won't break a window. We won't even curse anybody. We only come with the power of our souls and the presence of our bodies to love the hell out of the state of Alabama.
As a hero of the civil rights movement, he helped change the United States. But that was just the beginning. As a member of Congress, as ambassador to the United Nations, as mayor of Atlanta, and as chairman of the Centennial Olympic Games, he showed the world that America still has a heart and soul.
You are a profoundly good man.
Now, with Andrew Young Presents, he shares positive stories often overlooked by the mainstream media.
If it looks like we're biased, we are. We love this continent. We love its people.
Africa is the richest continent on the planet.
Muslims, Christians, Hindus, they're all here. Everybody's welcome. Everybody, except the terrorists.
Basically, our view of the Africa that we have seen. It's just beginning.
if you don't get anything else out of this day, I hope you get a conviction and a determination in your heart to visit Africa as soon as possible, because of all the reasons you've heard. Now let me go back to what I wanted to say. I was in 4th grade, and somebody gave me a project to study on Switzerland. Well, you know, I got interested in it, but by the time I was 20, I found myself in Switzerland. And one of the things you can't realize is that almost anything you're learning today is going to help you tomorrow. And the more you can learn today, the more you will be helped tomorrow. Now, one of the things we haven't mentioned, which I'm very sensitive about, is that almost half of Africa speaks French and not English. Some few speak Spanish, and some few more speak Portuguese. But if you're going to be involved in Africa, it's very, very important for you to do your language studies now. And I think that's what Ambassador Ba was saying, that the more you learn about here in school, the better prepared you'll be for a future that you can't imagine. Now, when I was in high school, I was a goof-off just like y'all. I didn't know where I was going to be, what I was going to do. And I wish if I'd had the slightest inkling, I would have taken a 3rd year French. I would have found time to go to Africa somewhere or to go to some country and become fluent in French or Spanish. You're getting an opportunity to do that. Now, why does Africa matter? It matters for all of the reasons we've heard. But one of the things that I remember was when I finally got to China, I was with a group of students. Well, I was really just walking the streets, and a group of Chinese students came up to me and said, "Where are you from?" in good English. And I was shocked because I didn't know what they were coming to ask me. And I said, "Atlanta, Georgia." And one of them said, "Empire State of the South." I said, "Huh?" And then there was a friend of mine who was from South Carolina. And she said, "Well, I'm from South Carolina." And he said, "You're a Tar Heel." She said, "No, that's North Carolina." And he scratched his head. Now, I've lived here most of my life, and I wasn't sure what South Carolina was. Do any of you know? They're the Gamecocks, but what he said was probably more right. He said, "Oh, that's the Palmetto State." But he not only knew about the United States of America, he knew things about the United States of America that I didn't know. So in preparation to live in a world where you're going to have to compete with students all over the world, you want to get as much of an edge as you possibly can. How many of you have been to Africa at any time already? Raise your hands. That's a surprising number. It's very few. But I would be willing to predict that in the next 10 years, life will require that at least half of you set foot on the African continent. I don't know how it'll take place, but it was in part because of my involvement in Africa that we were able to bring the Olympics here. Because you see, there were 19 votes of people of African descent out of 85. Well, by getting those first 19 votes, we got an edge on the other countries that we were competing with, and that's one of the reasons why we won the Olympics. You know Delta Airlines went bankrupt, don't you? They went bankrupt about 5 years ago. You know how they came out of bankruptcy? When they came out of bankruptcy, they started flying to Africa. And the Coca-Cola is going up on the stock market, even when the banks are going down, the automobiles are going down. And what that's saying is, to be successful, you have to have a global perspective on your business life. Now, the companies that you are likely to work for, the businesses that you are likely to be involved in, if they're going to succeed, they're going to have to be like Delta and Coca-Cola. They're going to have to be able to operate in a world market. Now, we talk about Nigeria's oil. And Nigeria's oil is, well, between Nigeria and Angola and Cameroon, they do supply about a fourth of the oil for this country. And so we always hear the terms oil-rich Nigeria. But let me put that in perspective. The oil in Nigeria is budgeted in their national budget at $21 billion annually. Now that's a lot of money. But Nigeria has 150 million people. So when you have to divide 21 billion and care for 150 million people, you're not rich, you're straining. Now, by contrast, right down the street here is the Atlanta airport. Now, the Atlanta airport generates $23.5 billion a year. So the Atlanta airport, a free enterprise, public-private partnership, creates 55,000 jobs and generates $23 billion of wealth in Georgia, which is just 9 million people. So when we say Africa is rich, we're telling the truth. But when we say Africa is poor, we're also telling the truth. We've heard about Darfur, and we've heard about Senegal. But Senegal is a relatively small country. Very, very wise men come from Senegal. Two of the smartest men I have ever known. President Leopold Senghor and a gentleman who had ended up with 4 PhDs from French universities, Cheikh Anta Diop. And even though it's small, it's had a big impact on the world in which we live. And much of our slave trade came through Senegal. But you can fly back to Senegal, and several of the pictures you saw there were from Senegal. Now, Sudan, on the other hand, is the largest country of Africa. And if you put Sudan on the map of the United States in the same scale, it would extend from Maine all the way down to Florida, and from the Outer Banks of North Carolina all the way out to St. Louis. It's huge. But they also don't have any roads. They don't have any railroad. They're working on a railroad now. But it's like the United States was in the 17th and 18th century. So there's an enormous gap. Now, that's a problem right now. But in your lifetime, that'll be an opportunity. Because Sudan is the valley of the Nile, and almost everything will grow there. Sudan has oil and other natural resources that we don't even know about. because many people have not even been in parts of the Sudan. Can you imagine 250,000 apes hiding somewhere and nobody know they're there? Well, that's what happened in the Congo recently. People have been going through the Congo for I don't know how long. And we've had explorers in the Congo since the 17th and 18th century. But just a few months ago, they found in an area of the Congo 250,000 gorillas that they thought were becoming extinct. They thought the only place you had these kinds of gorillas was in Rwanda, and we did a film about the Rwandan gorillas and related it to Willie B, who was in our zoo, thinking that there are only 650 or so gorillas left. And then all of a sudden they find 250,000 in the Congo. Well, in order to hide 250,000 gorillas, the Congo's got to be pretty big and pretty much virgin territory, and at least we don't know what's there. So I'm saying when I say the future is probably in Africa, I'm just guessing, but with pretty good evidence. Now, when we finally got Delta to start flying to Africa, they fly 2,000 flights every day. You know the flight that makes the most money? The flight that leaves here at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and gets to Lagos, Nigeria at 9 o'clock the next morning. And then it'll leave Nigeria at 11 o'clock and it'll be back here at 4 o'clock. And every day that flight is full, and that is making the most money in the entire Delta system. Well, I was on Delta's board for 20 years, and nobody would believe me when I said you could make money flying to Nigeria. But they didn't think you could make money flying to India either. But how many of you have seen Slumdog Millionaire? You ought to go see it. It's a great picture. I just got back from India a little while ago, and I got off the plane at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I staggered into the line that said American citizens, but I looked, and almost everybody in front of me was Indian. And I said, oh, I must be in the wrong line. Then I looked in the other line that said visitors and aliens, and everybody over there was Indian. That's the way it is when you come from Nigeria. The people flying back and forth from here to Africa, and at the end of this year, Delta will have 12 flights every day to Africa. Now that's for good reason. Delta is not in the charity business. It's not in the education business. It's trying to make money flying airplanes. And they've suddenly found that there's more business in Africa than they ever imagined. And so that's why I say you will probably get to Africa in the next 10 years, because there will be flights going to just about every part of Africa. And so I hope you take today as an opportunity to learn as much as you can about Africa. I hope you pick a country, any of them, whether they're 52 or 53, take 2 or 3, and go online and see what you can learn about any 2 or 3 African countries. Now, one other thing, and then I'm through. There were 4.5 million people who came here from Africa as slaves during the slave trade. But you know, more than 5 million people have come to the United States from Africa voluntarily since 1970. And that's what Bernadette was saying, that some of the most educated and prosperous people who are coming into the United States as immigrants are coming from Africa. And now they're beginning to go back to Africa. And my granddaughter's over at University of Georgia, And I kept running to all of these Nigerian names. And I said to her, golly, you got a lot of Nigerians here at the University of Georgia. And she said, you know, I bet you at least one out of every three black students on the University of Georgia campus has at least one Nigerian parent. And that was phenomenal to me. But if you look at your basketball games, you see all of these funny names. Right now they're Nigerian and Senegalese and Sudanese. I'm not technologically qualified. I can't turn this doggone thing off, and it keeps buzzing. But one of these days I'll learn. But you'll know how to do stuff like this. And so you'll know how to deal with Africa on the internet. You'll know how to download these pictures. You can get any of the pictures that I've made. And I only started making pictures because I was going places and seeing things that nobody saw. If you decided to describe Africa as a continent plagued by AIDS, you would be telling the truth. But if you decided to describe the United States as a country plagued by teen pregnancy, you would also be telling the truth. But you wouldn't think of America as a continent plagued by teen pregnancy. Yes, teen pregnancy is a big problem. In fact, the problem of the percentage of teenagers who are pregnant in the United States is probably greater than the percentage of people infected by AIDS in Africa. And so instead of defining a country and a continent and a people by its problems, let's do with Africa like we do with ourselves. Let's see how we overcome our problems and how we work with the people who have lived through these same tensions and temptations and not suffered from those problems. And let's define Africa by our best, and let's define our own lives by our best, and let's make sure that whatever problems we have, we overcome them and we turn them into opportunities for progress and prosperity. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Young. As always, you're challenging, you're appropriate, you're right on target, and you're stimulating to listen to. Thank you for that. I would like to recognize the Honorable Chudi Okafor, the Consul General of the Republic of Nigeria in Atlanta. Thank you. And some of you will be with the Consul General in a breakout session. Also, Mr. John Donaldson from the World Bank, who's done so much for us too. Thank you. We're just about at the end of this plenary session, but the President of the African Society, Bernadette, is going to make a few announcements about what you do from now. Thank you very much for being such a great audience.
All right. There were earlier 3 gifts that were given, but I just want you to know that every one of the more than 1,000 of you has a gift waiting for you, so you all leave here with something. You're welcome. The second thing is there are breakout sessions, and you all are assigned to those sessions, and I know there's a temptation to go with a friend of yours, but please adhere to the instructions and go to the breakout session that you're assigned. And you're also going to be given evaluations there. And listen very carefully, this is the last thing. Ambassador Young said earlier that when he was in class, that he was a goof-off. There are some of you in this audience today, if you look to the left and to the right of one another, look at each other, and you might look at someone sitting next to you and think, that person may not achieve much in life. So I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to tell you an African story. And this story is for those of you who have been taught that you are not to expect much of your lives. This is for you. This is a story told by Bishop Tutu that I'll never forget, and it's very short. There was a stranger, and he went to a chicken farm. In the middle of thousands of chickens, he saw something that was a little weird. It didn't look like a chicken. The other chickens didn't pay much attention to this chicken. It was sort of a freak chicken. And the stranger said to the farmer, "See that creature right there?" And the farmer said, "Yes." He said, "That creature is an eagle. That creature can fly." And the farmer said, "You're ridiculous. I've been raising chickens for 10 years, and that is a chicken." And so the stranger took the creature to the top of the mountain, and he said, "Fly, eagle, fly." And this creature flew away. The moral of the story is, you're just taking off now. There's no end to what you can do. You can contribute to this world and this international community that we've spoken of. That's the purpose of today. Dream big dreams because you can do great things. Thank you.